Safety first. Welcome back to the Lost Cause Ranch. That is right, today we are saving $9,500. Well, not exactly all in one day. Some of you guys have been following along with my shop build here, and we're trying to get as much of this done as possible without professional help. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, depends on the day. But to catch up those of you who haven't been watching, this is a 30 by 48 pole barn, 16-foot ceilings, and I decided to build this after my brother and I closed down our business where we had a 4,500 square foot shop, along with a European vehicle sales and service business. After that, we had a need for a place to work on the many Land Rovers in the collection, including this one of 811 1967 Land Rover Series 2A North American dollar area. Special piece right there. May not look special, but it is. But that brings us to today, a day in the beginning of January in Iowa, which means it's cold, which means we need insulation and heat. Originally, when I started the building, I planned on spray foam insulation, but like everything else in the last couple years, that also got quite a bit more expensive. And after getting a few quotes and penciling everything out, I decided it just wasn't feasible for me. I'm not made of money. I'm fortunate enough to be able to build my own shop, but that doesn't mean I can just blow it all willy-nilly. So I came up with a plan that involves a boatload of fiberglass insulation, along with this guy here, to save myself $9,500, which in my book feels pretty good. Now, I will concede that this setup is not going to be as airtight and maybe not quite as efficient as spray foam, but $9,500 gives me a lot of leeway in how efficient that is, and I think we're going to get pretty close with that paired with this, and we'll get into more on this later in the video. The big downfall of the insulation project was that the building was built with spray foam in mind, so I didn't frame out the girts to be beneficial to the fiberglass insulation. So on the outside of all the poles, the 2x4s were ran vertically like such at 32 inches on center. Ideally, if we would have done this thinking about fiberglass insulation from the get-go, we would have done what they call a bookshelf girt, where you lay them horizontal, and we would have put them on 24-inch centers, and we could have ran our R13 insulation right in between and gone along our way, and this would have took tremendously less time. But there's always a solution to every problem, and our solution was to take a bunch more 2x4s, rip them in half. So we successfully made a pile of toothpicks, and we framed vertically like so, and made ourselves a bunch of pockets for all the fiberglass insulation to lay into. Now with pole buildings such like this one, if you're not spray foaming, many people use the big rolls of insulation with condensation blankets, and you put it on the outside of the girts, and you sandwich it in between the wood and the metal siding. Now, I'm no construction or insulation expert, but I'm not exactly a huge fan of that solution for two reasons. One, it seems like for a DIY guy who's never built a building, such as myself, it would be very difficult to roll that out, up over everything, get the steel on there, and not bugger something up. If you haven't been around much, I'm good at buggering stuff up. The other problem I have with that is at every girt, you are pinching that insulation flat, and if fiberglass insulation is pinched flat, it loses a vast majority of its R value, therefore losing a ton of its insulation properties. It pinches, then droops, and comes back up to the next girt, pinches again, so therefore directly in the center in between the girts is the only place you have the full R value. With the method we're doing, the insulation has full thickness with just a slight pinch at each girt, but still being nearly 2 inches thick at that point, instead of compressing all the way down. The only downfall on that is we have more lumber framing vertically, and therefore we have a thermal break right there because there's no insulation there. I have it tucked behind, but not as much there. And that's where this 48-inch roll of white stuff comes in handy. And once we have everything up, I'll show you how this is going to work later in the video, and I think it solves all my problems, or at least all my insulation problems, because I have many problems. Let me tell you, lots of them outside of the insulation, and this ain't solving those. And in typical Joe fashion, I put myself in a bit of a pickle Got a friend bringing over his scissor lift because, as it turns out, I'm not tall enough to reach the ceiling. But I went ahead and made a mess of the shop again. So we need to organize some stuff and get some pathways built so we can move around in here. We're gonna make a scrap run too. Some of the stuff just doesn't need to stick around. Like this. We don't need that. Or that. Or one of these. Getting a tiny bit more space. That's solid steel. Tiny bit too heavy for me to lift up, so we're improvising. There we go. A little soft shackle, chain hoist, and pull it on. See, I can make a little bit of room. I mean, mainly by just shoving stuff in different spots. But look at what just got dropped off. Well, this thing's gonna be fun. I weeble wobble, but I won't fall down. Well, that's cool. Feel like I've moved the insulation one too many times. But I'm just clearing out this side once again. I think I'm gonna finish that before we move on to the ceiling. Mainly so I can tuck that guy in the corner over here. So having never used one of these before, our main goal is to not run into anything. This one will go up high enough to push me through the roof, so don't do that. I don't know how the driving thing's gonna go. That should do. Easy. I was gonna go eat lunch, but I suppose I have to move it so I can get out. Now we're good. Gotta leave room for myself, too. Better at driving that. We have our sidewall done, and it never ceases to amaze me how much taller this place looks when you visually remove the horizontal girts and go vertical. We're gonna slide this out. Well, theoretically, we're gonna slide this out. Something like that. Extendo version. Seems wobbly. So we got a couple rows done. I must have knocked that light loose. But you know what that means? We got to rearrange stuff again. There's two solutions to the problem resulting in me having to move everything a bunch of times. Number one, should have built a bigger shop. Two, the more realistic solution, should have less stuff. The more of these that go on the roof, the less I have to move each time. Be a bit of a tight squeeze. It's got to somehow make enough room for the lift to get over here. Doesn't do much good over there. Now I'm stuck. I haven't had this much floor space in quite some time. A guy could get used to it. I feel like I'm the captain of a ship. That's what I was going for. It would have looked cool all in one go. Starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Just got a couple rows to go on the long side, then a few of the short ones, and that wall there. Which is good news. This has been quite a bit more of a task than I expected going into it. You ever start something, then 10% of the way through, instantly regret it? That was this, but it is necessary. It's just a lot of work. And holding this guy above my head is starting to wear on me, getting a little sore. I'm just a wee little guy, not used to pumping weights. And how many of these staples do you think we've used so far? I severely underestimated that amount as well. We're almost through our 4th box, which means we've pounded 20,000 staples in here so far. And we still got to do another layer. But it is good news that we almost have the fiberglass rolls up, because right now it is 30 degrees out. Later this week, we have a low of -10, which is cold. With all the fiberglass on the walls covering the tin, we can at least heat it without worrying about condensation. So unfortunately, until all the steel is covered, we're gonna be working in the cold. If we heat it without the insulation and the vapor retarder, this stuff up, the metal would sweat, and I don't want the metal to sweat and then seal it up with the insulation. So we'll just tough it out, but thankfully it'll be all done before it's -10. As you guys know, I am wonderful at planning. I seem to leave myself in a bind a lot. Speaking of binds, I have a car here that needs to be inside because we're supposed to get 12 inches of snow tomorrow. So that means I gotta get some stuff moved. Come on, start rolling. As much as I like to complain about the winter, I will say a fresh snowfall is pretty neat. All the poor rovers are getting buried though. We did make enough room last night for the one I wanted to get in. It is an all-wheel drive E30, so it probably would have done just fine, but I figured if we got a foot of snow, I didn't want to deal with this thing getting stuck and getting it inside. And we're even holding a little heat in here. It started to melt the snow. Safety first. So we just got to test out that snowblower that we picked up with all the Volkswagen goodies. Fricker was brand new. We're probably about halfway through the snowfall, so I just wanted to get a start on this and not do it all in one chunk. It's like 30 degrees out, so this stuff is wet, heavy packing. So we'll split it up and make it easier. All right, so obviously I'm a child, and that usually results in me creating more work for myself. LR4 wood pile. We're kind of up against it, so I guess before I actually do any damage, we'll use that tree and the old Amazon winch to get my dumb ass out of there. I mean, it was fun, but it is slick, and I'm the dumbest person I know, so I guess with that comes consequences of my actions. Better man probably could have got out without the winch and doing more damage, but I'm not that better man. We just kissed it right about there. All right, time to quit jacking around. Gotta go make a parts run. So just out for another cruise. Was in the shop working, and we just lost power. They didn't lose power. I'm sure the heavy snow took a tree down onto a line. Figured I'd just drive up the road to see if I could see it. Got nothing better to do right now Can't do a whole lot without light. And I was gonna make dinner, but the house is all electric, so can't exactly do that either. Cruise around, see if we can figure out where the power went out. Looks like this house does not have power. Ooh, I see flashing lights. They got the spotlight out. I'm willing to bet this is the power company. Trying to find it as well. I think that's my transformer they're shining at right now. That's my house. Ooh, pulling in. I'll drive by and come back down. It's always curious to me how the power grid is ran, because this is the housing development not too far above me, and they obviously have power. The power going to this splits off the same overhead line as my house and the road I'm on. But it appears everyone on my road doesn't have power, but they do. But this is also a fancier neighborhood than me, so maybe the power company cares about them more. See, this is why they are the professionals. I didn't notice that the first time I drove by, but there is the issue. Guess we'll have power here again pretty soon. Or by the looks of it, we may already have it back. And when you look at that, we got lights on in the house. So we're getting some use out of that snowblower that came with all the Volkswagen parts, which is good. I only broke it once so far. Apparently you can't put a 6-inch chunk of limestone through it. It breaks the auger belt and bends a few things up. We had 13 inches of snow earlier in the week. Couple more inches the other night, and then it looks like we're getting another 10 inches today. This is the first snowfalls of the year, so I think we're catching up in short fashion. That 13 inches was the 4th largest snowfall we've ever received in our city, so I guess that's a fair amount. I went ahead and plugged the holes next to the electrical panel. Those are obviously not stapled in place because we will pull those back out. The power for the mini split is going to go out through there, so I want to yank that back out and then we'll secure it after that's installed. Above the garage door is figured out. We have this framed out, just need to put it in that section there and then stuff some in this little wedge there. Then this daunting task is finally complete, or at least this stage of it. We still have more to do, but it is considerably nicer in here, and even the little kerosene heater is helping out now that there's some amount of insulation. This right here is going to be the safe way of doing this. Man, this is such a good feeling. I can't even explain it to you guys. This became quite a daunting task, getting all the fiberglass rolls in place. I've got about a month into this. Obviously not a month's worth of time, but I started a month ago. I probably have 2 weeks into putting this up. There is quite a lot of square footage of insulation up there, and even with just the first layer going on there and not having our bubble radiant vapor barrier in place, this little kerosene heater is keeping the place somewhat warm, and that little guy is at least going to get us to be able to do our next step, which is this right here. Not the energy drink, but the paint, and that's going to really help tie in and make this place look very finished and the way I originally envisioned. But no, we went ahead and scored this guy at Menards, my favorite store, on the clearance rack, $9. We're obviously probably going to need more than a gallon, but I want to make sure this color works for what I want to do before we go buy more. So let's see if it works out the way I'm thinking. So that gives you a taste of the look I'm going for in the shop. It's a little bit dark on this end because I had to pull off the lights on those trusses so we could get them all the way painted. So there is the color combo, and I think that's going to look pretty sharp when we have it sitting up against the trusses and the poles all the way around. I really wanted to see the exposed poles and trusses on this building. That was one thing that was a must from the start on this. But this roll here, well, 10 of these rolls, is the next and final step in the insulation. This is R foil, and I believe this is claimed to be R 3.7 on its own. Although it seems R values in insulation is kind of witchcraft, and who knows? But what we do know is this over top of R13 is supposed to give us R19. So we'll have R19 all the way around, which not the best, but in a shop application is mighty sufficient. And this is also a radiant barrier, but the main reason for this is we're gonna use this as our vapor barrier. Like I mentioned earlier with metal siding, if you heat it and there's a big temperature differential from inside to outside, the metal sweats. You heat this up enough and it has bare metal inside, it becomes a rainforest and it actually starts raining from the ceiling. So we are gonna put this up and we are gonna caulk up against all the posts and tape all our joints. And that is gonna be our vapor barrier, locking this building tight with no water vapor traveling through. And on top of no water vapor, that means we will have no air traveling through, which will get us close to the airtightness of spray foam. Now, trust me, I know it is not going to be as airtight as spray foam. I don't think there is anything out there, but this, I think, will do the trick. The only other thing we need to do outside of that is get some door brushes for the garage door, because you can see light through there. So obviously, with the ribs, we can't run a normal garage door seal, so we have to run the brush style, and we'll get that sealed up, and we're gonna throw a layer of this stuff on the garage door to help insulate a little bit there until we order our bougie insulated roll-up garage door. You guys heard this before. The way my bank account works is I got checking and savings, and I just have no money in either of them, especially for one of those garage doors. At the moment, at least. Appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate you seeing how we were able to save nearly $10,000 on our building, which at this point saves us nearly 20% of the total cost. It pained me to think I was gonna have to spend more on insulation than I spent on our 7-inch concrete slab. But the next time you see this, this will be up. The building will be looking the way I want, and we'll be working on something cool. Appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate you subscribing. And if you liked the shop build, there'll be more in the future. Catch you guys on the next one.